Why did they ignore her? Maybe it was the dust, maybe the heat, or maybe the world simply couldn't see someone who never demanded to be seen. She stood at the gate of Forward Operating Base Jericho, shoulders relaxed but spine unbroken, like a pillar carved from quiet steel. The air shimmered around her, heat, dust, and suspicion hanging heavy. She looked like anything but a threat. No weapon slung across her shoulder, no battle tattoos, no loud presence. Just a duffel bag, sand-stained boots, and eyes that carried a history no one here bothered to ask about. Her name was Erin Thorne. Civilian analyst, allegedly. But if you looked carefully, if you paid attention, there was a weight behind her stillness, as if she knew exactly where she stood, as if she'd been here before in 100 forms, 1,000 quiet battles no one logged in after-action reports. The young sergeant at the gate didn't see any of that. To him, she was just another bureaucrat walking into a war she didn't belong in. "ID," he grunted, spit cup tucked behind the barrier, sunglasses reflecting her face back at her like she barely existed. She offered her credentials, calm. He took one glance, eyes sliding past the clearance level like it was meaningless. In his mind, the hierarchy was simple: uniform over civilian, muscle over posture, youth over age. He didn't see experience, only softness. He didn't see strength, only stillness. He didn't see danger, only a woman. "Logistics, huh?" he smirked, handing the ID back without scanning it. "Pentagon paper pusher, you wait on that bench. Someone'll come get you." He pointed at a metal bench baking under the sun, a place meant not for waiting, but for humiliation. She didn't move. This wasn't about the heat. It wasn't even about him. It was about humiliation wearing a flag. She had seen this look too many times, in briefing rooms, at checkpoints. In the eyes of men convinced war had only one face, one gender, one posture. "Sergeant," she said, polite, even gentle, "scan the badge." "I don't need to. I know the type. You don't go anywhere here without an escort." He looked past her again like she was a speck of sand. His boredom was a weapon sharper than arrogance. Erin took a slow breath, the kind people mistake for weakness, the kind soldiers used to ignore in briefings just before losing lives they could have saved. "It's a level 5 clearance," she said quietly. "Top secret, triple alpha priority, you need to verify it." He chuckled, irritated. "Lady, I've seen generals come through here. You think you outrank them. Sit down or I'll call someone to escort you there myself." There it was. Dismissal. The oldest uniform in the military. Her hand slipped to her bag, not to draw anything, but to steady herself. Not out of fear. Just the familiar ache of remembering how tiring it was to constantly prove yourself in rooms that only valued noise. "You're from Omaha," she murmured, eyes still soft. "2 combat tour, expert rifle qualification. Your squad leader notes your confidence, sometimes too much of it." He froze. "You read my file." She didn't blink. "I remember things." That unnerved him more than a drawn weapon ever could. But pride is a stubborn soldier. He straightened his vest, jaw tight. "You can wait," he snapped, "or you can go back to wherever you came from." A moment of silence. Erin could almost feel the judgment press against her skin, like dust, like heat, like a lifetime of places she had been told she didn't belong. Then she pulled a small sat phone from her bag, nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just one button pressed, a 3-second hold. Then she put it away like it was nothing. No threat. No plea. Just truth quietly activated. 90 seconds later, the speaker above the gate exploded to life. "Gate 1, this is Colonel Madson. What the hell is going on?" The sergeant stiffened. Sir, there's a civilian." "Is her name Dr. Erin Thorne?" The sergeant swallowed air. "Yes, sir." "Open that gate this instant. Salute her. And pray she doesn't file a complaint, or You will be guarding latrine pits in the mountains for the rest of your miserable career. Silence. Dust. Disbelief. The sergeant's jaw trembled as he scrambled to open the gate. His salute shook. Erin didn't return it, not out of spite, simply because the moment had already moved on, and she never wasted motion on ego. She just walked, one quiet step at a time. Inside, air conditioning replaced heat. Technology layered the walls. Soldiers moved with controlled urgency. This was a war room disguised as a hallway, glowing screens, radio chatter, boots pounding rhythm like a heartbeat pumping fear and grit and duty. She had walked into 1,000 rooms like this, and yet each time she felt it, that slight twist in her chest, not nerves, not excitement. A reminder that power is rarely loud. That silence can be the sharpest blade. Colonel Madson waited in the Tactical Operations Center. Broad shoulders, veins like wire, a jaw molded by command and resistance, and too much pride sharpened by long years in uniform. His stare wasn't welcoming, only calculating. "Dr. Thorne," he said flatly, "welcome to Jericho, gate mishap, apologies." There was no apology in his voice. She nodded once, handled. His irritation flickered. She, stolen the dignity from his staged courtesy. Men like him didn't like when power didn't come wrapped in rank. "You'll be stationed over there," he pointed to a dim workstation in the corner where obsolete consoles gathered dust. "We're busy here. Stay out of the main channels. If you have insights, pass them through my XO. Stay quiet. Stay out of the way. Stay small." Same old script. She glanced at his command board, tactical screens glowing like constellations of war, then returned her gaze to him, calm. Understood. No challenge. No ego. No fight. Just acceptance. The type that made men underestimate her right before the world shifted under their feet. She sat, opened her bag, plugged in her system with quiet precision. Keys tapped softly. Code scrolled like a language only she could hear. She wasn't here to prove anything. She wasn't here to win a debate, to show teeth, to flex. She was here because something was coming. And she could feel it like pressure before a storm, like fate leaning forward. One drone feed flickered on the big screen. Then another. Operators frowned. Power dipped, lights dimming, generators rumbling awake under the earth. A static cough shivered across radio channels. "Sir, we lost uplink with Reaper 7. Sir, second drone down. Satellite feed is collapsing." "What?" The TOC erupted. Alarms stabbed the air. Voices scrambled to hold order as systems collapsed like dominoes, one after another. Maps dissolved into noise. Screens turned to static. Sensors flatlined. Radios choked on their own silence. War was suddenly blind. Deaf. Cut open and helpless. Colonel Madson barked orders, loud, frantic, futile. Reboot, switch frequencies, reroute uplinks. Nothing worked. It wasn't jamming. It was breach. Deep, surgical, designed by someone who knew exactly where to cut. Panic sharpened every face. Their war machines had become paper, their command center a tomb. Erin watched. Silent. Steady. Not surprised. She unplugged her console, slid down to the floor, lifted a dusty panel no one had touched in 20 years, wrapped wires, old copper veins of a forgotten system, analog, untouchable, ancient but hers. While soldiers fought ghosts in shattered screens, she built a new battlefield, the kind only she understood. She didn't speak. She didn't ask for permission. She just worked. Men shouted, metal clanged, fear swallowed discipline, and in the center of chaos she breathed slow and steady, fingers dancing a patient rhythm. A gate guard had dismissed her. A commander had sidelined her. A war had underestimated her. Now the world would learn what silence was capable of. Because war didn't always look like gunfire and muscle, and voices raised to fill rooms. Sometimes war looked like a quiet woman in glasses, kneeling on a concrete floor, resurrecting a base with wires and memory, and a mind sharper than steel. She didn't come here to be seen. She came here to keep the world from going dark. Someone once told her she didn't have the presence of a warrior. But presence was a myth. Impact was the truth. And her impact was about to fall like a hammer, quiet, precise, unstoppable. How do you fight an enemy you can't see? How do you breathe when every system you trust suddenly stops breathing with you? The Tactical Operations Center felt smaller now, walls contracting with every flicker of dead screens. Panic wasn't loud. It was quiet, suffocating, a cold hand tightening around the throat of every soldier in that room. They weren't trained for blind war. Not this kind. Not a war fought in circuitry and silence. Colonel Madson barked orders like he could command gravity itself. His voice was a hammer striking the same spot again and again, trying to break reality back into shape. Reset satellite grid. Reroute comm traffic. Emergency protocols now. Nothing answered. Technology had abandoned them. The hum of machinery died, replaced by a heavier sound, breathing, uneven, desperate, human. The enemy wasn't outside the wire. They were inside the circuits. Already here. Major Evans wiped sweat from his brow, knuckles white on the edge of a dead console. "Sir, we've lost the drone network, SATCOM, everything digital. It's not a malfunction, it's a coordinated breach." He swallowed hard. They knew exactly where to hit us. That sentence broke the room more than the outage ever could. Someone had built this trap. Someone who understood the system intimately. This wasn't warfare. It was surgery. Erin remained kneeling on the floor, hands buried in the guts of the forgotten analog system. Wires wrapped around her fingers like veins of an old machine coming alive again. Her movements were quiet, deliberate, surgical. A young intel technician near her stared, confusion laced with desperation. "Ma'am, what are you doing?" She didn't look up, restoring a heartbeat. "But the systems are down." "They're drowning," she corrected softly, fingers twisting copper with the gentleness of a violinist tuning strings. "I'm bypassing the water." He blinked, a soldier far too young to understand metaphors in crisis, but something in her voice made him stay still, made him listen. Madson's voice cut through the room. "Who ordered you to?" He stopped. Not because she answered, but because in that split second the lights brightened. Not all. Not fully. Just enough. Enough for the room to exhale. Every soldier turned toward her, the dusty corner no one looked at twice, now a lighthouse in a blackout ocean. She didn't revel in it, didn't even acknowledge it. She just kept working. Madson stared, chest rising too fast, pride battling fear. Who was she? A scream of interference burst through the PA system. White noise. Then a voice, shredded by static but unmistakable. "Under fire, ambush, Tangi Pass, Spectre team pinned." Gunfire cracked through the transmission, raw and jagged like bones breaking on stone. Men flinched, radios hissed, then silence. "Spectre. The elite unit. Madson's best." His jaw locked. "We need real-time feed on that convoy now." Erin didn't lift her head. "Satellite visuals are gone. Targeting grid is hijacked. You're blind." The words carved into the room. Evans whispered, "Then they're dead." "No," she said quietly, "not if we see another way." It wasn't confidence. It wasn't arrogance. It was certainty, the kind born from experience carved in silence and solitude. Her fingers flew across her manual input device. Not typing, sculpting signals. She rerouted power again, channeling it like someone who memorized how energy breathes. She didn't hack. She corrected. She didn't break rules. She bent physics. One tiny console flickered near her, green text blinking. Connection established. Awaiting uplink. She whispered, not for anyone else in the room, but for the machine, the mission, the world that needed her to be more than what anyone believed. Wake up. A pulse flashed across the diagnostics panel. One forgotten uplink, a relic, blinked to life. An old satellite frequency. Almost obsolete. Almost forgotten. Almost just like her. The room fell silent as small symbols crawled across her screen, raw thermal data. No video, no feed. Numbers and heat signatures only someone like her could translate. Madson stared at the primitive output. What the hell is that supposed to be? Life, she murmured, and the ones trying to take it. Evans stepped forward. You can read that. She nodded once, calibrating heat patterns in her head like coordinates etched in memory. 12 hostiles, elevated ridge, 2 RPG carriers repositioning, Spectre convoy disabled. How do you know all that? A comms tech whispered, all slowly replacing panic. She ignored the question. They're boxed in. They have 90 seconds before flanking fire begins. Madson pressed his palms to the table, realization dawning like a slow storm. You can talk to them. Not talk, she replied, guide. Her voice didn't rise, didn't challenge, she just was. She tapped her transmitter, a crude analog signal stitched with digital microbursts. A message shot into the dark. Spectre 1. This is Jericho. Stand by for coordinates. The TOC froze. Seconds passed. Then, Jericho, this is Spectre 1, reading. Hope cracked the tension like thunder. Evans blinked. How? She built her own comm link, someone whispered. No, another breathed. She rebuilt the battlefield. Madson opened his mouth, then closed it. The truth was cutting him slowly, filleting leadership from ego. He was no longer in command. She was. She didn't seek the room's permission. She simply acted. Enemy at your 50 meters. Elevation 2 o'clock RPG team. Move west 30 meters. Cover, then push. The operators watched as she became the sight they lost, the strategy they needed, the voice they never expected. How could a woman like her know how to command war? How could someone who looked so quiet carry the burden of life and death in her tone? But then war binds itself not to uniforms, not to muscle, not to ego. War binds itself to those who understand it. War obeys those who listen deeper. The room watched her, stunned, reverent. She didn't react, didn't smile, didn't let adrenaline dictate her. Her heartbeat wasn't in her pulse, it was in her precision. A chair rolled beside her. Major Evans placed it silently. You can sit here, he said. She didn't sit. She didn't need elevation. Presence followed her whether she stood or kneeled. Respect wasn't furniture. A faint tremor crossed the floor, a ghost of distant artillery. Soldiers stiffened. She didn't flinch. Instead, she spoke, to no one, to everyone, to the machine, to the mission. We hold this line, not with guns, with minds. Someone exhaled shakily. Who are you? Aaron did not answer. The truth didn't need drama. It didn't need to be declared. It would reveal itself quietly, inevitably, the way storms break clouds. For a fleeting moment, her eyes lifted from the console, catching Madson's stare across the room. He expected defiance, victory, smugness. He saw none. Only necessity. And a weight that didn't belong to rank. Behind them, a soft beep. A second satellite returned. Then a third. Old networks, legacy circuits, broken teeth of history, and she made them bite again. One of the techs whispered, voice trembling. She's bringing the whole war machine back online manually. No, Evans murmured. She's bypassing the war machine and building a new one. Someone's mother could have been her. Someone's professor. Someone you'd forget standing in line at a coffee shop, invisible in normal life. But war recognizes its architects, and chaos remembers its masters. Aaron Thorne, silent and unassuming, whispered the words only the battlefield could hear. I didn't come here to lead. Her hand hovered over one final command sequence, the one that would open the reality of who she was. I came here to keep you alive. Lights blazed, terminals rebooted, systems surged like a body gasping for breath after drowning. And somewhere across the base, a klaxon cut the silent morning. Reinforcements mobilizing. Birds prepping engines. The base awakening. Because one quiet woman touched a hidden nerve in its spine and made it remember how to stand. War didn't roar tonight. It whispered. And quiet one. What does power sound like when it doesn't raise its voice? Sometimes it sounds like breathing. Sometimes it sounds like fingers on keys. Tonight it sounded like her. The bass hummed back to life in fragments, not in triumph, but in disbelief. Screens flickered like dazed eyes waking from a nightmare. Data streams returned in stuttering pulses. Voices crackled faintly in headsets. But no one spoke, not at first. They were watching her. Aaron stood over the improvised console, posture calm, like she was simply organizing books in a quiet library rather than resurrecting a battlefield from the dead. She didn't move with urgency. She didn't bark commands. She worked with stillness, and somehow that stillness bent panic to her will. The first real sound came from outside, rotors spinning to life, blades chopping the dawn air, Black Hawks prepping for QRF deployment. The entire base, its lungs recently collapsed, inhaled again. Madson wasn't breathing the same air as everyone else. His chest rose unevenly, not with fear but recognition. Recognition of being outranked without stripes, of seeing his authority dissolved by competence so absolute it required no uniform. He swallowed something sharp inside himself. Pride, ego, whatever name men gave the thing that breaks when they realize they aren't the strongest voice in the room. He didn't speak, neither did she. The only voice belonged to the battlefield. Spectre team pushing west. Moving under fire. Alive. That alone felt like defiance against fate. A comm specialist broke the silence first, voice thin. Reacquiring partial sat imagery, bleeding data in, stand by. Screens brightened. Pixels formed mountains, then roads, then heat signatures. Rough, unstable, but real. A collective breath rose like a heartbeat shared between 200 souls. Evans whispered, I don't believe this. Aaron didn't look up. Believe systems, doubting them never saved a life. She tapped another command. Not fast, controlled, always controlled. Each motion was intent, not reflex. She didn't fight the system. She steered it like an old friend walking with her through danger. Madson found his voice, low, brittle. You knew this would happen. Aaron didn't turn. I knew someone could make it happen. And you knew they'd target us. No, I knew they'd target someone, and war doesn't give warnings. It tests defenses by breaking them. Her tone wasn't dramatic, no flourish, no emphasis. Truth doesn't need dressing. Madson clenched his jaw. You could have told me. You wouldn't have listened. Silence heavy, accurate. Evans glanced at Madson, not with disrespect, but with a painful understanding. Everyone in this room had dismissed her, and now she was quietly stitching their world back together while they learned humility the hard way. Aaron shifted her weight slightly, the first sign of fatigue. 12-hour flights, dust, heat, adrenaline, genius, all pushing inside a body that simply kept moving. In war, strength rarely looks like muscle. Sometimes it looks like endurance disguised as patience. A headset crackled. A voice came through, frayed but alive. Jericho, this is Spectre Actual, pushing through Third Ridge, casualties light, asset intact. You angels or ghosts up there? Aaron typed coordinates, voice steady. Neither, keep moving, reinforcements inbound, ETA 16 minutes. Copy that, you saved our damn lives, whoever you are. Evans looked around the room. Soldiers who once smirked now stood reverent, shoulders squared not by command but by respect earned. Real respect, the kind forged under fire and silence. Someone patch me their biometrics, Aaron murmured. I need heart rate and pressure readings. A medic tech blinked at her. You want vitals on the operators. They're injured. I need to know how badly before the QRF reaches them. Madson snapped. We're not routing classified operator biometrics to a civilian workstation. Aaron didn't even look up. Then you can treat them personally with your medical license and field trauma certification. He froze, his mouth opened closed. She wasn't insulting him. She was stating fact. Evans exhaled, rooted. Madson didn't argue this time. Because authority doesn't win battles. Capability does. The medic tech pulled up the encrypted pipeline, hesitating only once. The system challenged her credentials. Aaron reached without looking and pressed a forky sequence on his console. Access granted. Clearance verified, Oracle. The room froze. Evans' voice cracked, L'Oracle. Madson stared like he was seeing a ghost crawl out of a legend. The name floated in silence, a myth stepping into flesh. Aaron didn't flinch, didn't confirm, didn't deny. She simply continued working. Labels were irrelevant, missions were not. But soldiers whispered. Like children seeing a constellation they grew up hearing about. That's impossible. No way. She retired. Oracle isn't real. We have her in our base. Whispers weren't disrespect. They were all learning how to breathe. Madson spoke again, quieter this time, almost gentle, like talking to someone holding the world's fuse. Why come here? Why not just sit in some command bunker behind marble walls? She paused just briefly, one heartbeat's worth. Then, because maps lie, screens lie, people don't. Evans frowned slightly, meaning. You can't protect a battlefield if you've never walked its dirt. Distance breeds arrogance. Arrogance breaks nations. She didn't lecture, she confessed. Madson's eyes softened barely. The beginning of realization, not completion. The beginning of humility. The PA system chirped. QRF deployed. 2 birds airborne. ETA 12 minutes. Aaron nodded once, a subtle release of tension. Good. But just as relief crept in, static slashed across another console. A sudden interruption, sharp enough to pull every gaze. A young operator flinched. Sir, unidentified signal spike on the southern perimeter, looks like. His voice failed. His hands trembled on the keyboard. Looks like someone's trying to re-enter our network. A second attempt. The enemy hadn't given up. Madson stiffened. Evans cursed under his breath. Aaron didn't react with fear. She reacted with precision. She typed one command. Lock route. Trace source. Counterpulse arm. Don't engage yet, she murmured. Evans leaned in. Why not? We can shut them out. They want to see if we'll fight their way again. If we do, we lose again. She rerouted power lines through the analog bypass, a ghost circuit, a shadow path, invisible to digital threats. War in silence again. Madson's tone was different now, not commanding but asking, what's their objective? They want to blind us again before the extraction. They don't know I'm already operating off-grid. Evans stared. This isn't just hacking, this is warfare without bullets, she finished. The most dangerous kind. Because when you remove noise from war, only truth remains. She leaned back slightly, rolling her shoulders. For the first time, she looked tired, not defeated, just human. The weight of the moment pressed against her bones like gravity multiplied. A young female radio specialist, barely 20, freckles, trembling, approached hesitantly. "Dr. Thorne." Aaron looked up. "You need water or anything." Aaron blinked, surprised, not by the concern, but by its quiet sincerity. It had been a long time since anyone looked at her like a person first. She nodded once. Water would be helpful. It was the closest thing to vulnerability she'd shown all night, and somehow it made her power feel even larger. As the specialist hurried off, Evans whispered to Madson, "She doesn't lead like us." Madson stared. "No, she leads like war itself." Erin didn't hear them. Her eyes were on the thermal map, one hand resting on the copper wire like it was a lifeline to a world she refused to let fall. Outside, rotors thundered, boots ran, engines ignited. The base was fully awake now. Because one woman refused to let silence become defeat. The lights steadied, the network stabilized, the battlefield shifted again. Not with violence, with intelligence, with resolve, with quiet. You don't always need to raise your voice to shape the world. Sometimes, you just need to refuse to break when everyone expects you to. And Aaron Thorne had never broken. Not when dismissed. Not when ignored. Not when underestimated. She was proof of a truth every soldier eventually learns the hard way. Sometimes the strongest warrior in the room is the one who never picks up a weapon. Because she built the battlefield instead. What happens when the storm calms, but the sky still feels heavy? When the danger fades from screens, yet lingers behind nerves and breath. Some battles end loudly. Others end in silence so deep it echoes. The tactical operations center settled into that silence, brittle, shell-shocked, suspended between fear and awe. People whispered, not because they needed to be quiet, but because something sacred had happened here and nobody wanted to break it. Aaron Thorne didn't bask, she didn't even pause, she simply worked. The world had nearly fallen apart and she stitched it back with wires and willpower. But her face held a fatigue now, not the kind born from fear, but from memory, from having done this before, from knowing she'd do it again. Sometimes heroes look invincible. Sometimes they look tired. She looked tired. A medic whispered, "Her hands aren't shaking." Evans replied, "They don't shake, the world does." Madson heard him. He didn't argue. Aaron reviewed the telemetry feed specter moving through the valley, heartbeat steady, pressure stable, breathing ragged but alive. Every number mattered, every body mattered. She didn't see operators or assets. She saw human beings she refused to lose. War wasn't glory to her, it was responsibility. One screen flickered a grainy thermal outline of soldiers limping across ridge cover, one man being helped, his silhouette sharp against the cold rock. The room exhaled again. Relief didn't come like cheering. It came like oxygen returning to lungs. Erin allowed herself one slow blink. Not relief, recalibration. No battlefield stayed calm for long. Evans approached quietly, as if stepping near a wild animal with teeth made of equations. "QRF is 2 clicks out," he murmured. "They'll link up soon." Aaron nodded. He hesitated. "Dr. Thorne, Oracle, whatever's proper." "No titles," she said softly. "Names are enough." It wasn't humility and it wasn't arrogance. It was clarity. Titles build walls. She had spent her life dismantling them. Madson stiffened nearby. He wasn't angry anymore. Anger belonged to ignorance. He had stepped past that threshold. What replaced it wasn't comfort, it was uncertainty. Who was he, standing next to someone like her? A commander. A soldier. A witness. He didn't know anymore. You saved them, he finally said. I gave them a chance, she corrected. They saved themselves. He swallowed hard. It was painful for him, not because she diminished his ego, but because she refused to let him put her on a pedestal. Pedestals lead to worship or resentment. She wanted neither. You could have told me, he tried again, quieter this time. Aaron's voice held something new, faint sorrow. I spent years telling people things they refused to hear. He understood. Ego wasn't just loud, sometimes it was deaf. Outside, footsteps thundered, rapid, disciplined. The door burst open and a group of soldiers entered, dirt-streaked, sweat-drenched, adrenaline still thick in every breath. Spectre team just back from hell. They froze when they saw her. Rough men, eyes burned by combat, bodies cut by war. Men who had been 1 minute from death, and saved by lines of code typed by someone most would have ignored at a coffee line. They looked at her like she wasn't real. Their team leader, tall, beard-dusted gray, right arm torn and wrapped, stepped forward. He didn't salute. He didn't speak. He just stood there, eyes locked on her. Recognition, respect, something deeper. He raised 2 fingers to his temple, a soldier's silent salute not found in any manual, the kind given only to ghosts who save lives. Aaron dipped her head once. Not acceptance, acknowledgement, equals, human beings doing their jobs. No glory. No theatrics. Just understanding. He exhaled, voice gravel low. You were our eyes. That's not something we forget. She replied just as quietly. You fought. That's not something I forget. A moment passed, heavy, sincere, unadorned. Then he stepped back, words replaced by gratitude too raw for language. War strips us. It also binds us. The binding always speaks quieter. A tech ran in breathless. Ma'am, sir, the Pentagon, they're calling again. Madson straightened reflexively, then stopped. He looked at Aaron. She didn't glance up. You answer. He blinked. You're the commander, she continued. Act like one. It wasn't an insult. It was a gift, the rare chance to earn back dignity. Madson nodded slowly and took the call. Pentagon brass filled one screen, generals, intelligence chiefs, faces carved by secrets. Their expressions carried urgency but softened when they scanned the room and saw calm instead of collapse. Jericho, report status. Madson spoke, but not with the bluster from earlier. His voice now carried steadiness earned, not assigned. Base secure, systems stabilizing, Spectre recovered, all thanks to civilian assistance. He didn't say Oracle. He didn't need to. They already knew. Their eyes shifted behind him, toward her silhouette in the corner, back bent slightly over a console, hair messy from tension, glasses slipping down her nose, nothing glamorous or dramatic about her. She looked like she belonged anywhere but a war room. And yet she belonged here more than anyone. A Pentagon official swallowed hard. Dr. Thorne, are you remaining on site? She didn't turn, for now. For how long? As long as I need to. That was all they got. She didn't serve authority. She served necessity. The call ended, the room exhaled, machines hummed, lives continued. Aaron leaned back, stretching her fingers. Only then did a slight tremor betray exhaustion. Evans noticed first. He stepped forward instinctively, like he'd catch a falling ceiling beam for her if he had to. You should rest, he murmured. Later, she replied, rest during peace, not during aftermath. Madson frowned. You think another hit is coming. I know it. No fear, only fact. Anyone who strikes once tests again. Silence after chaos is not calm, it's reload. The room chilled. She rubbed her eyes, glasses pinched between finger and thumb. For a moment, she didn't look legendary. She looked like a woman carrying too many nights with too little sleep. A quiet voice broke the tension. The young female radio tech returning with water. She held it out awkwardly. I didn't know people like you existed. Erin took the bottle gently. Softness entered her eyes, as if she saw not admiration, but youth. Someone who reminded her of who she once was before war taught her how invisible brilliance can become under camouflage of assumptions. People like me don't exist, Erin said softly. We continue anyway. It wasn't pride, it was truth wrapped in fatigue. The girl swallowed hard, then whispered, "Thank you." Erin paused, truly paused, and looked at her. For what? For saving them. And then something rare flickered in Erin's expression. Not pride. Not victory. Pain. Quiet pain, heavy, old, familiar. A shadow of all the ones she hadn't saved. The losses nobody here knew she carried. The ghosts she walked with. Not everyone, she murmured. Silence settled again, different now, respectful, wounded, real. Madson stepped closer, carefully, as if approaching a fragile truth instead of a fragile person. You've done enough for tonight. She finally met his eyes, calm, firm, honest. There is no enough in this work, Colonel, only until the next moment. He didn't argue, he couldn't. A loudspeaker crackled overhead. QRF touchdown, Spectre extraction complete, medical inbound. A ripple of relief, shoulders dropped, eyes softened. Erin closed her laptop, wrapped the wires. Only now did her movements slow with fatigue. She stood, spine straight but weary. I need 15 minutes, she said quietly, and silence. They didn't question her, no one dared. She left the TOC, boots dragging slightly, not to sleep, to breathe, to exist outside algorithms and battles if only for a moment. And as she stepped out into the early morning light, pink dawn staining desert dust, the soldiers inside finally exhaled. Evans murmured, voice low. She carries the war like it's hers alone. Madson replied quietly, humbled. She carries it because the rest of us still don't know how. And for the first time since the crisis began, someone whispered the truth everyone felt but couldn't say. She's alone in a room full of people. Because genius isolates. Responsibility isolates deeper. And saving others often means nobody ever saves you back. Outside, the wind picked up soft, cool, almost like a hand brushing her hair. Not comfort. Recognition. The world knew her burden, even if people didn't. Sometimes, the strongest warriors aren't the ones who roar after victory. Sometimes, they're the ones who walk away quietly, fighting battles no one sees. How do you rest when the world still vibrates from what almost happened? Some people collapse. Others shake. Erin simply walked. Not quickly, not slowly, just forward. Boots brushing dust. Steps steady, but heavy with hours that carved into her bones. Dawn stretched thin across the horizon, pale gold bleeding into the deep gray remains of night. The sun hadn't decided what kind of day it would be yet. Neither had she. The base had begun stirring, engines warming, cases being stacked, radios crackling with routine. To most soldiers here, the crisis was already turning into a story they'd tell later. To Erin, the story wasn't finished. It never was. She passed a group of junior troops whispering near the motor pool. Their heads turned as she walked by, not mocking this time, not dismissive, something else. Recognition, curiosity, fear, respect. An odd cocktail, the kind reserved for ghosts people suddenly realize were alive all along. One soldier straightened like he wanted to salute, but didn't know if that was even appropriate. How do you salute someone who doesn't carry rank, yet outranks the moment itself? She spared him a soft nod, barely there, enough to let him breathe again. She reached the quiet side of the base, where noise didn't chase her thoughts. A lone bench sat near the airfield perimeter. Wind brushed the wire fencing, rattling faintly like the whisper of something that had passed through. She sat. Finally. Not elegantly, not collapsing, just lowering herself like a weight finally allowed gravity. Her eyes drifted to the mountains, their silhouettes jagged, ancient, indifferent, peaks that had watched empires rise and fall, peaks that had seen every kind of war, not just the kind with bullets, but the kind inside people. Her breathing slowed. Not meditation, just letting a moment exist without fixing it. Inside, she wasn't calm. She was sorting, cataloging, preparing. Her silence wasn't peace. It was recovery. Behind her, the gravel shifted. Someone was approaching, careful steps, but not timid, familiar cadence. Colonel Madson. He didn't speak immediately. He didn't stand above her. He sat, leaving just enough space to show respect, not distance. He set 2 paper cups between them. Coffee, steam curling into the cool morning. For a long time, neither spoke. He finally broke the quiet, voice low. I used to think leadership meant being the loudest in a storm. Erin kept her gaze on the mountains. Storms don't listen to volume. He chuckled, bitter, self-aware. No, they listen to understanding. Silence again, but now it wasn't heavy, just true. You didn't have to stay in that room, you know, he added. You could have left. No one could have questioned you. Erin answered without turning. Leaving is easy, staying is a choice. Why stay? She didn't hesitate. Because they were still fighting. He studied her profile, tired eyes, hair messy from the night, posture soft yet unbreakable. Not heroic by movie standards, human by reality's harsher measure. You remind me of someone, he murmured. She didn't ask who. She didn't encourage reflection. She simply let him speak. My first deployment, he continued, there was a linguist attached to our unit. Quiet woman. Nobody noticed her at first. People assumed she was just there to translate. He exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that carries regret. One night we walked into an ambush. Everything exploded. Visibility zero. Radio worthless. Chaos. I thought she froze, then she started pulling us to cover, calling routes, coordinating through hand signals and whispers. She saved half my platoon. A pause, memory tightening his voice. I thanked her afterward. You know what she said? Erin waited. You don't need to remember me. Just remember to listen next time. Silence hung heavy, familiar. Erin's reply was soft. Did you? Madson's voice cracked just slightly. Not until last night. Another pause. The wind filled the space between words. She finally looked at him. You listened when it mattered, that's enough. He shook his head. No, I listened when I was forced to. Next time I want to listen before. That mattered. Growth always comes dressed like regret. Before she could answer, radio chatter drifted over the base, louder now, more confident. Spectre was back, pilots prepping for patrol, the war machine breathing again. Madson glanced at her cup. You gonna drink? She smirked faintly. I didn't realize I had a choice. You don't, he replied dryly. It's terrible coffee, but tradition matters. She took a small sip. The bitterness grounded her. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the warmth fill more than just her throat. Thank you, she murmured. For the coffee, he asked, or for trusting me enough to drink it? Both. He chuckled. The tension didn't disappear, but it eased, like muscle unwinding one painful knot at a time. A few minutes passed in quiet acceptance. Then footsteps approached again, quicker, nervous. Evans jogged up, tablet in hand, breathing hard. Sorry to, interrupt, he said. His tone betrayed the truth. Nobody wanted to interrupt her ever. Erin straightened slightly. Report. We've detected residual digital signatures, Evans said, voice tight. The enemy's not gone. They're probing, testing. They know we survived. They'll come harder next time. Madson cursed under his breath. Erin didn't react. She took one slow sip of coffee, then set the cup down. Of course they'll come again. Evans hesitated. So what do we do? She rose, no rush, no drama, just rising like inevitability. We prepare the right battlefield. Madson stood too. Hours. Hours, she confirmed. Then softer, more personal. War doesn't vanish just because we survive one night. Pressure returns, threats adapt. Evans nodded. We'll follow your lead. She turned to him, gentle but firm. No, you'll follow logic. Emotion follows me. I need you to follow reason. Evans blinked. Yes, ma'am. She started toward the TOC again, boots echoing softly on gravel, posture steady despite fatigue. Evans stayed rooted, watching her go. She never stops, does she? Madson looked after her, admiration settling fully now. No pride to defend, no rank insecurity, just respect. She doesn't know how. Evans swallowed. Doesn't that break a person eventually? Madson shook his head, not dismissing the concern, but understanding the truth. No, he said, it breaks the world if she stops. A breeze carried dust across the ground, trailing behind her like shadow and purpose intertwined. People think war is about explosions. But often, war is a quiet woman walking back into a room because she refuses to let others fight blind. Silence followed her. Not loneliness. Reverence. Some warriors roar. Some bleed loudly. She carried her wounds where nobody could see them, the kind earned over years of watching disasters before others noticed the warning signs. She stepped inside the TOC again, screens lit, operators froze in unspoken expectation. She didn't speak of victory, she didn't give orders. She simply said, "We begin again." And without waiting for applause or permission, she leaned over the console and resumed her quiet war. Because courage isn't always the moment you save the world. Sometimes courage is waking up and choosing to save it again tomorrow. How do you prepare for a threat you can't see coming when the dust has barely settled from the last one? Most people cling to relief. Aaron never did. Relief is a lullaby the enemy writes for you. Inside the TOC, the hum was steadier now. Computers alive, radios alive, soldiers alive. But beneath the regained order lived a tremor, quiet, coiled, waiting. She sat at a console again, not in the corner this time, but near the center. Not as a choice of ego, but geometry. The closer to the center, the shorter the distance information travels. Efficiency disguised as presence. Evans hovered beside her like a loyal satellite with a clipboard complex. We've isolated event logs. I'm scrubbing packet trails. He paused. Feels like we're cleaning up after a ghost. She didn't look up. Ghosts don't leave logs. This was human. Military rooms always change temperature when someone mentions humanity and threats. Humanity meant intelligence. Intelligence meant malice, intent, design, not chaos, choice. Madson stepped forward. We need to identify who did this. Aaron nodded once, still typing. You don't identify threats like these. You understand them. Evans blinked. What's the difference? Names tell you nothing. Motives tell you everything. It landed slow, like a stone sinking in deep water. A notification pinged. She tapped it open. Lines of network telemetry, code signatures, command injection attempts, all traits, but in her mind, patterns were people. Technology didn't behave on its own. People behaved through technology. She murmured as she worked, almost like she was thinking out loud for the machines to hear. No attempt to destroy infrastructure, only control it. Coordination, not chaos. Surgical, they didn't want to cripple, they wanted to blind. Whoever they are, they don't waste, they test. Madson crossed his arms, a foreign intel actor, Russian, Iranian. Not flags, she replied. Flags are visible, this wasn't meant to be seen. Evans frowned. Then what did they want? Her fingers stopped. For a beat, silence. The room leaned toward her like she was gravity. They wanted to measure us. That shook them more than explosions ever could. War wasn't coming. War was already here. And someone was taking notes. Evans inhaled sharply, like a rehearsal. "No," she whispered, "an assessment." Madson paled. Assessments weren't preludes. They were filters: who survives, who doesn't, what breaks first, where to strike. She pushed her glasses up, rubbed her eyes. Exhaustion didn't dull her. It just made her quieter. Her voice stayed even. This was not the attack. This was the question. "And what's the answer?" Evans asked, half afraid. Aaron tapped once more. "That depends on what we do now." A beat. "Sit back and wait," she said softly, "or force the enemy to react to us." Madson squared his shoulders. "We react." She met his gaze. "No, we lead." There it was, strategy forged not in power but duty. But even steel bends when it remembers it used to be human. Her posture dipped, almost imperceptibly. Fatigue tugged at her bones like gravity that remembered her real age, not her legend. Madson noticed first. He wasn't blind anymore. "Thorn," he said quietly, "rest." "I will," she replied. "When?" She didn't answer. Because rest wasn't something she earned. It was something the world earned by surviving long enough to give her time. She looked at the junior comm tech next to her, a girl whose fingers trembled slightly over the keyboard. "How long have you been awake?" Aaron asked. 21 hours, ma'am." "Go sleep." The tech blinked, "But the network." "You have backups, you trained them." Shock flickered. No one had ever said that to her. Aaron saw potential like a surgeon sees a beating heart, essential, overlooked, powerful. The girl nodded shakily and left. Aaron turned to Evans. "Rotate your staff. 1 hour sleep cycles. Cognitive failure kills faster than bullets." Evans swallowed. "What about you?" She paused. "I don't fail." It wasn't confidence. It was a burden. Madson stepped forward. He didn't challenge her. He just asked like a person, not a colonel. "When was the last time you slept?" Her silence was the answer. Evan's voice softened. "Dr. Thorne, you're one person." She blinked twice, slow. "Yes." "You need help." She looked up, and for a fragile second there was a flicker in her expression. Not doubt, not fear, just a human ache, the kind built over years of never leaning because leaning meant risking collapse. "Help," she echoed. "I forgot what that feels like." Not whispered, not broken. Just truth, raw, quiet truth. Evans breathed in, steadying. "You're not alone, not anymore." She didn't smile, she didn't nod. She just returned to work because sometimes acknowledgement isn't an expression. It's a pause. The door swung open again. Spectre team leader, arm in sling, face lined with exhaustion and adrenaline aftershock. But he didn't carry the edge of someone needing to prove himself. He carried reverence. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "Intel says enemy drone signatures near Sector 3 Ridge. You predicted they'd test again. You were right." She didn't lift her head. "They always test again." He shifted, clearing his throat. "I've seen a lot in my life. Never seen someone steer a battlefield without touching one." She didn't reply. Compliments weren't fuel. They were noise. He stepped closer, voice lower. "You saved boys today, tough boys, good boys. Not many people ever earn their gratitude." Her fingers slowed. "I don't need gratitude." "We know," he murmured. "That's why they gave it." She finally looked at him. His posture softened, almost protective. He wasn't used to protecting anyone who didn't need it. She didn't need it, still he offered it. Aaron's gaze didn't soften, but it warmed, fractionally, like the first degree above freezing. "You should be in medical." "We were dead without you. I can stand a little longer." Not loyalty, recognition, a bond forged not in ranks or orders but survival. He placed something beside her. Bandage packet, water, pain reliever, small things, human things. "Don't forget your flesh," he said. She blinked. "I don't forget, I ignore." He nodded once. "That's the dangerous part." Then he left. Madson exhaled like someone feeling the weight of two worlds pressing between his ribs. "I spent most of my career thinking the battlefield belonged to those who bled on it." "It does," she said. "But there are other ways to bleed." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Silence often says more than language. Evans cleared his throat. "So, what's the move?" Aaron's fingers resumed typing. The world faded except for signal patterns, packet trails, latent signatures. Her voice rolled low, steady. "We turn the quiet hours into armor." "How?" She exhaled, soft, calculated, by building a trap inside the silence. She pulled up a new window, empty code space. Blank battlefield. She began designing signals, triggers, decoys, false weaknesses, artificial access points. Not walls. Mirrors. They would not wait for the enemy. They would be the reflection that pulled the enemy in, then closed around them. Evans whispered, "You're not just defending, you're baiting them." "No," she corrected. "I'm teaching them to reveal themselves." Madson watched, a soldier learning strategy without bullets for the first time. And in that moment, he realized something he'd never understood before. Some wars are won by those who refuse to sleep until the world is safe. Not because they believe they're unstoppable, but because they know the world breaks if they stop. Aaron typed one final instruction. Code pulsed, like a heartbeat anchoring the base against the unseen tide. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "War isn't constant gunfire. Most of it is waiting, listening, preparing while others exhale." Evans looked around the room, half-lit, men and women rotating off shifts, fatigue and faith blending into purpose. "What do we call this phase?" he asked. She answered without hesitation. "This is the part where heroes recover," she said, "and guardians don't." She leaned back, closed her eyes. 1 second. 2. Not sleep. Just breathing. Then she opened them again and kept working. Because the world always rests one heartbeat too long. And she had learned long ago. You don't earn peace by sleeping through danger. You earn it by being awake when everyone else closes their eyes. What happens when the body obeys but the soul asks, quietly, "How much longer?" The base moved like a living organism now, tired, cautious, awake in a way sleep wouldn't fix. Aaron didn't stand apart from it. She threaded through it, quiet as breath, sharp as a pulse spike on a crisis monitor. But not everyone saw her as a savior. When the world begins to understand who you are, there are always two kinds of eyes. Those that widen with trust, and those that narrow with fear. The first new tension came not from screens, but from boots and brass and pride. A convoy rumbled in, black SUVs, flags tucked, authority carried not in weapons but in posture. High-rank officials stepped out, suits, earpieces, polished shoes meant for conference rooms, not deserts. The kind of men who believe war is a chessboard they own, because they bought the table. Aaron saw them enter the TOC before anyone spoke. She didn't move. She didn't prepare. She simply existed there, and that was enough to unsettle anyone who thought power came from rank. A stern figure led them, silver hair, crisp jawline, eyes carved from politics and pressure. A deputy director, intelligence world royalty. "Dr. Thorne," he said without waiting to be invited into her world. Her gaze lifted slowly, only once she finished the command she was typing. "Director." Madson straightened reflexively. Evan's spine hardened. Even the screen seemed to still. The director's tone held respect but threaded with another emotion. Not intimidation. Control. the need to re-establish hierarchy in a room where it no longer mattered. Your presence here was unexpected. Aaron replied evenly. Unexpected does not mean unnecessary. We appreciate your contribution, he said carefully, but your clearance ended years ago. She closed her laptop. Calm, clean, final. National security doesn't expire. The room felt the temperature drop, not anger, but truth landing like iron. He stepped closer. You acted without authorization. I acted because others froze. His jaw tightened, a crack in polished authority. There are protocols. She held his gaze. Protocols did not save those soldiers. Evans swallowed hard. Madson shifted, ready to speak, but stopping when he realized she didn't need anyone to rescue her. She never had. The director leaned in just enough to make his voice private, or as private as power ever tries to be. There are consequences when civilians cross boundary in classified spaces. Her reply was almost too soft. There are consequences when lives are lost because someone waited for permission. A beat. You embarrassed some very important people last night, he murmured. Aaron's eyes never wavered. Important to who? Silence wrapped the room like a wire pulled tight. Madson stepped forward then, not to defend her, but to stand where he should stand. Sir, he said steady, without her, everyone in this room is either dead or captured. The director didn't look at him. He looked only at her. I know what you are, he whispered. And something old and quiet flickered in her expression, not fear, recognition. Then you know arguing is pointless. A subtle standoff, two worlds, one built on authority, one built on necessity. He let out a slow breath, the kind made of frustration and reluctant respect. When this is over, he said, voice low, there will be questions. Then, she replied, I hope they ask the right ones. He turned sharply and left, entourage trailing like shadows, unsure who they really follow. As the door shut, the room inhaled again. Evans exhaled shakily. I thought he was going to try to remove you. He can't, Aaron said, not yet. Madson studied her. They fear what they don't control. No, she whispered, gathering her laptop again. They fear what they can't replace. That truth lingered like smoke. She returned to her station, but this time fatigue wasn't the only weight. Memory stirred. History shook loose flashes of another command center, another crisis, another politician who valued optics over lives. That day she hadn't been too late. But someone else had been. She rubbed her wrist absent-mindedly, a scar hidden under a sleeve, faint line only visible in certain light. A reminder, a failure she never named, a bruise she never let heal because healed wounds are forgotten and forgotten lessons repeat. Evans approached carefully. Dr. Thorne, can I ask something? You already did. He swallowed. Right, I mean another question. She waited. You ever wish someone else could do what you do, so you could just stop? For the first time in hours, she looked away from the screens, not to avoid, to choose the honesty. Yes, she said quietly, every day. Evans blinked, shocked. But no one came. That sentence weighed more than gunfire, more than blood. It was truth forged in loneliness and service. Silence settled. Madson spoke again, voice softer than she'd ever heard it. You don't have to carry it alone now. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Hope was a language she hadn't spoken fluently in years. Instead, she returned her focus to the network trap. She'd built digital ambush coiled like a waiting heartbeat. Enemy traffic, she asked. Evans checked. Minimal probes only. Good. Why? Because overconfidence makes them predictable. She wasn't celebrating quiet. She was reading it like a sniper reads wind, like a surgeon reads pulse, like someone who knows calm isn't mercy, it's strategy. Hours passed. Screens glowed. The world outside moved without knowing how close it had come to ending. Then a ping. Not loud, not dramatic, just a tiny alert, ordinary and lethal. Evans froze. Unidentified handshake attempt, foreign signature, slow, quiet, professional. Madson tensed. They're back. Erin shook her head. Not back, watching. Another attempt, softer, clever. They want to confirm we have our guard down, she murmured. They expect exhaustion. Madson muttered, they aren't wrong. Erin whispered, almost like a vow. They will be. She entered a final line of code. The trap armed itself silently, digital claymore wired not to explode but to reveal. Evans watched, breath held. What happens if they take the bait? She didn't blink. We follow them home. A heartbeat, then another. Then the trap sprung. A comms officer gasped. We have trace feedback, routing nodes. I've never seen traffic fold like this. Evans stared. Is that? Erin's voice cut clean. Origin point. On the screen, coordinates bloomed, not fully clear, not victory, but a direction. A thread on a map. Madson whispered, amazed, you just found them. No, she corrected softly. I offered them a mirror. They stepped into their own reflection. Evans stared at her like she wasn't built of muscle and bone, but focus and inevitability. Erin stood slow, steady, controlled. We notify command, and we prepare a response. Madson nodded. We're ready. She looked at him, eyes tired, soul louder than her posture. You're ready, she said. I'm just tired. He almost smiled. You say that like tired people don't win wars. Tired people don't win wars, she whispered. They prevent the next one. He understood then. She wasn't fighting this enemy. She was fighting the one after. Spectre team leader entered again, sling now tighter, eyes sharp. We rolling? He asked. Erin nodded once. Soon. You coming with us? He asked. No, she said. My war isn't on the ground. He stared at her. Respect, yes, but also sorrow because he could feel what she never spoke. She had never been allowed to choose a battlefield that didn't hurt her. Then unexpectedly he extended his good hand, palm open, offer not demand. She looked at it, long enough that for a second the room didn't breathe. Her hand rose, hovered, almost touched his. But she stopped, fingers inches away. I can't afford to need people, she whispered. He lowered his hand slowly. Needing isn't weakness, it's memory. Her voice cracked, so faint only he heard it. Memory is where lost lives. He had no answer for that. No one did. Outside, the wind picked up again. Dust swirled without storm, just movement for the sake of not being still. Because stillness was dangerous. Stillness was when ghosts returned. Erin faced the screens again, the world again, the duty again. Not for glory. Not for validation. For every life she hadn't reached in time before. Because some warriors don't fight to win. They fight so the next person doesn't have to. What happens when the storm leaves, and yet, the air still tastes like thunder? The base felt different now. Not safer, not calmer, just changed. Like everyone was learning how to breathe in a world they thought they understood yesterday. Erin stood alone near the perimeter fence, watching desert heat begin to rise off the ground in faint waves. Morning light stretched long, thin shadows behind her. She looked like part of the landscape, weathered, unmoving, carved by forces no one could see. The coordinates traced from the enemy probe sat in her mind like a silent drumbeat, a direction, a threat, a promise that the world still spun toward danger. But not today. Today was the first day in years where she wasn't reacting. She was deciding. Footsteps approached. She didn't turn, she already knew who it was by the cadence alone. Evans walked up hesitantly, hands in pockets like a school kid afraid to bother a teacher he admired too much. "Satellite confirmation came in," he said quietly. "Your trace was right." "It usually is." He nodded, not arrogance, reality. "You passed the intel." "Yes." "And command." "They're overwhelmed." She smirked faintly. "They always are when reality refuses to ask permission." Evans joined her at the fence, hands resting on cool metal. He looked tired but not broken. Stronger, even, like proximity to her had reshaped him, sharpened him. He spoke softly. "I used to think brilliance was loud." "Brilliance," she murmured, "is usually exhausted." A gentle wind moved her hair across her cheek. She didn't brush it away. Small things could exist now. She let them. Evans exhaled. "What happens next?" "We prepare." "We already are." "No," her eyes tracked the horizon. "We prepare differently now." Evans frowned. "How?" "We trust the right people." His chest tightened like a cord plucked inside him. "Do you trust us?" "I trust potential," she said. He didn't take offense. He didn't shrink. "We'll earn the rest." She gave the smallest nod. "That's how it works." Silence stretched, but not heavy. Quiet like the pause after someone has stopped drowning and started breathing again. Evans finally turned to her. "You could lead entire war theaters." "I don't want to lead wars." "You're too good at it." She didn't answer, because some truths aren't compliments, they're scars. The crunch of boots sounded again. This time, heavier steps. Colonel Madson approached, a posture straighter than yesterday, voice steadier. Something had changed in him. He had seen war through her eyes, and it rearranged him. "Intel's mobilizing task groups," he reported. "Joint Command wants your assessment in D.C. within 72 hours. Evans' eyes widened. "They want her there." Madson nodded. "They'd rather work with her than against her." Aaron didn't react. "They want control, not collaboration." "Maybe," Madson admitted, "but they're also scared, and scared people listen." "They listen," she said quietly, "until the danger passes." Evans swallowed hard. "So do you go?" Aaron didn't answer yet. She just stared forward toward nothing and everything. Madson spoke carefully. "If you stay, people here follow you." Evans added softly, "If you leave, the world listens." Aaron took a breath, not heavy, not weary, measured, balanced on the knife edge between obligation and autonomy. "All my life," she whispered, "I've only gone where crisis pointed." "You don't have to anymore," Madson said. "I do." He met her eyes. "No." She looked back at the base, soldiers moving, equipment humming, life continuing only because she demanded it continue when things could have ended. They weren't looking at her now. They were living again. That mattered more than applause ever could. Evans shifted. "Can I ask something personal?" "You already have." He almost smiled. "Why didn't you stay in the system? Why leave the clearance, the position, everything?" She turned to him, really turned, full face, unguarded. For a moment she looked human instead of inevitable. "Because systems care more about being right than being ready," she said. "And people died while they argued." There it was, the wound beneath the armor, the answer that didn't need details. Madson nodded slowly. "Not pity, understanding. You carry ghosts." "No," she whispered. "They walk beside me. Ghosts follow those who forget." Evan's voice lowered. "And now?" "Now," she said softly, "I am tired of walking alone." It hit them harder than battlefield explosions, because they had both been waiting for the world to see her humanity instead of her myth. "You're not alone," Madson said. Evans nodded. "Not anymore." She didn't smile. She didn't break. She just breathed like someone rediscovering oxygen that didn't taste like duty. She looked back at the horizon, voice steady again. "War is changing. The enemy has patience now, discipline, understanding." "And us?" Evans asked. We'll adapt, she whispered. We always do. The PA system crackled overhead. Flight line announcement. Routine. Mundane, beautiful in its ordinariness. Erin let her hands rest at her sides, not clenched, not braced for crisis. Just there. Madson cleared his throat. A transport to DC can leave whenever you decide. No rush. No rush, she repeated softly, like she was testing the phrase on her tongue. Freedom always tastes unfamiliar at first. Evans hesitated, then offered something small, gentle, almost childlike. You can stay or leave or come back. For once, it's your decision. Her eyes softened, just a fraction enough. I'll think. When she said those words, Madson understood something profound. She wasn't making a choice today. She was allowing herself to believe she had a choice. And that was its own battlefield victory. Evans checked his watch, then looked at her again. You want to eat real food, not protein bars and caffeine. The question felt almost sacred in its simplicity. Food, rest, life outside alert codes. I do, she started, then stopped. She didn't know the word, not because she lacked vocabulary, she lacked familiarity. Madson answered for her gentle, yes, she wants to eat. Erin didn't argue. The three of them began walking back toward the main buildings. She didn't take point. She didn't follow. They moved side by side, imperfect, uneven, human. Halfway there, a young private jogged up, nervous, awed, holding something. Ma'am, Dr. Thorne. She paused. The private held out a small engraved coin, unit challenge coin, worn edges, carried through sand and sweat and fear. My brother, alive because of you, the young man said, voice trembling. He's inspector. He told me to give you this. Erin stared at the coin. She didn't reach for it. The boy swallowed, please. Slowly, very slowly, she extended her hand, took the coin. It felt heavy, heavier than metal should. Heavy like gratitude she wasn't sure she deserved but could no longer refuse. Tell him, she whispered, he survived because he fought. No, ma'am, the private said, eyes shining. He survived because you didn't give up on him. Something deep inside her moved, a small shift, a crack in armor not breaking but opening. Thank you, she murmured. He saluted sharply and ran off, relief flooding him like he'd just done something holy. Evans exhaled. You're changing things. Not things, she whispered, people. Madson looked at her sideways. And yourself. She didn't respond. Not yet. They reached the dining facility. Soldiers inside buzzed with low talk, trays clinking. Ordinary life. The kind she forgot she once had the right to. She paused at the door. Evans held it for her. Madson waited beside her. She stood there, the woman who stared down an invisible war, who saw failure before success, who carried ghosts so others didn't have to. And she stepped inside. Not as Oracle. Not as the unseen mind behind missions. But as a human being who had earned breakfast. The room fell quiet for a moment as soldiers noticed her, not starring, not saluting, just acknowledging, weightlessly, respect without demand. She moved through the line, chose coffee, eggs, bread. It felt strange, almost ceremonial. Evans watched, smiling despite himself. Madson shook his head, amused. You look uncomfortable doing normal things, Madson observed. I haven't had practice. You will. She sat. They sat with her. She lifted her fork slowly, like a soldier holding a flag before raising it again after battle. And when she took the first bite, Evans whispered, That's victory. She didn't answer. But she didn't disagree. Outside, the base carried on. Planes rolled. Radios buzzed. Life continued not because danger was gone, but because she had given everyone permission to live in spite of it. She sipped her coffee quietly, thoughtfully, then almost to herself. Sometimes strength is staying awake when others sleep. A pause. But sometimes, she murmured, eyes softening just a little, strength is allowing yourself to rest. Evans looked at her, full of unspoken pride. Madson nodded, steady and sure. And for the first time since she arrived, she let her shoulders drop a fraction. Not surrender, not weakness. Relief. Dignity unwound into peace. If only for a moment. Because tomorrow there would be more threats, more shadows, more waiting, more wars that began in silence long before anyone noticed. But right now she had a seat and breath and warm food, and people who saw her not as myth or machine, but as a mind and a heart that had earned the right to exist in daylight. The world didn't know she had saved it. That was fine. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And then quietly it rests, just long enough to rise again.